Do you ever tell someone what you pray about? I don't even know if we're supposed to do that. It seems kind of like a violation of boundaries to say out loud what we share in the dark privacy of prayer. It seems like I should know whether it's okay or not, but honestly, I've never actually talked to anyone about it before. This is a sermon, by the way, for the 12th Sunday of Pentecost. Anyway, one of the regular petitions that leaves my mouth or the innermost lips of my heart is a plea for help, as in, we need your help. As in, we can't get better without you. As in, we seem to be powerless to help ourselves, so please help us. In the context of my prayers, it's a reference to our degradation of the earth and our propensity toward violence toward one another. As a recovering alcoholic, it's an acknowledgement of powerlessness that is a precursor for recovery. Otherwise, we get stalked by the demon of hubris, which causes us to imagine that we are strong enough and capable of enough, all on our own, to conquer addiction or compulsion or whatever wound of the soul troubles us. Hubris inflates our ego like a pump expands a bounce house, and we act as if we do not need or deserve ongoing help and support. It's not only pride that goes before the fall. It is the overestimation of personal strength and power that will trip us up like nobody's business. I mention it because our species seems to have this terrible disability that compels us to want more, expect more, demand more, just about anything that has ever tickled our fancy. We seem powerless to overcome our hunger for more. I remember that existential dull ache for more from my childhood at Christmas. You see, my mom was a Christmas fiend. She loved, or maybe felt compelled, to do family Christmas as if God was grading her on it. Preparations for it started shortly after Thanksgiving and went all the way into Christmas Day. There was a spectacularly festooned and sumptuous meal on Christmas Eve, followed by Christmas morning around the tree. It was the one time of the year that we had a fire in the fireplace so that our living room looked just like a Norman Rockwell scene. Honestly, I do not know how many presents were under the tree, but as a kid it seemed like gazillions. And of course there were 5 kids in our family, so there were a bunch of presents. And my dad would pass out each present, one per person at a time. So the unwrapping took a long time as we watched everyone else open their presents, slowly alternating between 5 kids and 2 adults. But still, after all that preparation, the big meal, the midnight church, Christmas morning bedlam, and slow, deliberate execution of opening presents under the tree, when the last present was unwrapped, I felt that dull ache for, just one more. The history of that open wound in our species is behind today's gospel story, referring back to the story of Moses and the people wandering around the Sinai Peninsula, complaining about being hungry and thirsty. They get hungry and God gives them manna. They get thirsty and God gives them water. They want more and better, and so God gives them quail. Not enough, never enough. I don't think I'm going to go out on a limb here to speculate that you, like me, are a poster child for wanting more of something. Maybe it isn't chocolate or money or love, but I'm betting it's something, and maybe more than one thing. We want more. And if someone tries to convince us that we actually have enough, well, we get annoyed. We maybe even get angry. Enough is not something we can ever be convinced of or taught or proven, because you and I have the one and only measuring cup or yardstick for what we want. No one else gets to measure our desire. But it's not just stuff we want more of. There is a dark tax we wish to exert. We see it all around us today in our culture, that insatiable demand for our enemies to think like we think and be like us and want what we want and believe what we believe. As Wendell Berry writes in that poem today, our deep-seated requirements for mercy, forgiveness, and justice turn us into the monster we seek to vanquish. We point to them with a bitter harshness and that tells what they must do to earn our forgiveness, and as if we knew God's mercy. Never enough. We want more. We want them to change and be what we think they should be, and they the same about us. They demand that we change and be what they think we should be. Both of us monsters, insisting that the other monster be domesticated and changed forever to live in our own image. It's never enough with us. And so, back to my prayer. We need God. Please, God, you, cradle of planets and stars, help us, for we seem powerless to help ourselves. So that's the first step, by the way, to acknowledge our powerlessness and admit that our lives have become unmanageable, and then ask God for help. Do you ever do that? I mean, really? Do you ever admit powerlessness? Personally, I think it's really hard, a huge stretch for people like us, to acknowledge our powerlessness over something we never seem to be able to fix in our character, something like that. A character defect. Ugh. Not just acknowledge our powerlessness, but that this defect of ours has made our lives unmanageable. It's hard. There is this little seam in this spiritual scheme we have that is so easy to fall into and never get beyond. We look out at our social problems, for example, and can see clearly how it has become unmanageable. Take this bitter division I mentioned between the so-called left and right. We've both become monsters, and the situation is unmanageable. We can see it, admit it, but wait, you and I have a part in it. It isn't just the landscape out there and around us that's the problem. It's our own part in it. It's the web of our own creation. Even though there are thousands and millions of other people spinning the web, it's happening in part because of our defective character. Or the degradation of the planet. Our own life choices, picking the scabs on environmental disasters. It isn't just out there, it is also our own defective character moving the pieces of our own lifestyles, making it also unmanageable. You see what I mean? It is easy to universalize a problem and acknowledge our powerlessness to fix it, but then there is this come to Jesus moment of feeling the weight of it in ourselves. The heaviness of our own defect. It is only then that we can really take the first step of acknowledging our powerlessness and how our lives have indeed become unmanageable. It's a kind of tough love, tough spirituality, the real nitty-gritty of our being Jesus people, of eating the bread of life. And the second step is not for wimpy Christians either. After acknowledging our personal powerlessness over a defective character, even though we share it with millions of other people, and admitting that our lives have become unmanageable, even though we may be living on top of the pile, the next step is to actually believe that a power greater than ourselves could and would restore us to sanity. That's right. It's a big step off the plank. Believing, which means acting as if, the cradle of stars and planets we call God is powerful. Believing, acting as if a power greater than ourselves could and would restore us to sanity. I know. A power greater than ourselves, right? More powerful than us? Not bloody likely. It's hard and painful mountain inside of ourselves for us to climb and to get over. Well, I won't bore you with the other steps, the other 10, because they're all tough, and these first 2 may have already eroded my credibility with you today. But listen to that psalm. But as I listen to that psalm, I feel the tether of our powerlessness. Out of the depths I cry to you, gracious God. Please hear my prayer. Let your ears be attentive to my cry for mercy. If you, beloved, were to note what is amiss, who could stand? And I read that Wendell Berry poem, which hits me between the eyes. They are to you as sunlight on a green branch. You must not think of them again except as monsters like yourself, pitiable because unforgiving. And that wacky, crazy, ridiculous John leaves me with a headache that I know comes from my own inner resistance. I am the bread of life. Your ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness and they died. This is the bread of life that comes down from heaven so that one may eat of it and not die. So forgive me. But the readings today bring us to the brink, to the top of the page where the steps begin, and remind us that if our faith is for real, we have arduous, tough spiritual steps to do. Spiritual steps that ordinary people will simply dismiss as absurd. Oh God, cradle of the planets and stars, help us, please, for we are powerless and our lives have become unmanageable. Hear our prayer. Amen. Peace be with you.